research career. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Sander to talk about the ordinariness of translanguaging and its implications for English language teaching. Over to you, Sander.
Thank you so much, Angel, for the introduction. I'm so humbled to be here and very happy to see everyone on Saturday, beautiful Saturday morning. And thank you also so much to the group who's running this YouTube research group. And I've checked some of the videos and I think they look really interesting. So thank you for all your hard work for doing this. It's a great contribution, I think. Okay, so today, as Angel said, I'll be talking about why we should understand translanguaging in terms of the idea of ordinariness and how do we understand its implication for TESOL and English language teaching. And sorry, I have a bit of a cold. I was in Mongolia a couple of weeks ago and it was so cold. I got a cold and I'm still recovering, so I might be coughing sometimes. So before I start my talk, I just want to acknowledge the country I am working and living. I would like to pay my respect to the traditional owners of this land, the Wajik people of Noongar Nation. This is the land where I prepared this presentation, and I get my inspiration as a migrant background scholar living in the Aboriginal land. Of course, I get my guidance and inspirations from the Aboriginal knowledge, one of the oldest knowledge systems in the world. My researcher's positionality is that I was born and raised in Mongolia. I spent my childhood in Mongolia, and I left Mongolia in my early, I guess, adulthood. So I would like to also pay my respect to elders past, present, and future in my native land of Mongolia. Of course, as a researcher with Mongolian background, I also draw my strength and philosophy and guidance from the oldest but last surviving nomadic knowledge systems in the world. I would like to do some warning before I do my presentation because some of the images and content may be disturbing to some of the viewers, and I apologize for that. Okay, so of course this presentation will be around the idea of translanguaging. So I would like to revisit the idea of translanguaging, what we mean by that. So translanguaging is basically I've spoken about this many times. This is my tree of life, and this tree of life is here for this presentation. It's called translanguaging, as you can see. But all the branches have this, different sort of names. So, as you can see, transgrammaring, transcripting, transglossia, metrolingualism, polylanguaging, linguoscaping, and all of that. So all of these different names and terms, they actually maintain the similar main ethos with the idea of translanguaging. The idea is that we need to unstructure language, right? So the Chomskyan way of understanding language from the grammatical structure is that we're sort of understanding language from language perspective. So this is Japanese, English, Mongolian. So we are sort of focusing on language. Whereas translanguaging, when we unstructure it, as Del Hims, he, for example, said that we need to understand actually language in relation to human beings, not as universal structure of grammar, but from the perspective of human perspectives. That means that we need to unstructure what it means language, and then we need to understand the language from its fluid, flexible perspective. So all of these ideas have these similar ideas. All of these terms and ideas, all of these branches are sort of like, in my opinion, fall into the post-structuralist view of language, which we call translanguaging here for this presentation. I know all of these different terms have different names. For example, metrolingualism or polylanguaging, right? And sometimes people ask me, But why so many different terms? Why are they like different? How are they different? So I would say that they are contextually different. For example, metrolingualism, coined by Alistair Pennycook and Amy Otsuji, is very much focused on the urban social linguistic context. So looking at the migrants in the marketplace or looking at the corner shops, right? Whereas transcripting, coined by Li Wei and Zhu Hua, is more about social media, language of young people, right? And so forth. So they have very crossing, Ben Rapton's crossing. We know this is urban youth culture from the UK. So very much contextually different, but very much similar ideas. Okay. Now I would like to define what is translanguaging and some of the norms of the translanguaging here before we start. So the very traditional bi-multilingual traditional framework, including the code switching, the norm is that bi-multilinguals almost seem to be understood as 2 or 3 monolinguals in one brain. That means that when a bilingual person or a multilingual person know how to speak English or Spanish or Japanese, and when they start code switching, we are expected them to speak as if a monolingual speaker. So, for example, as you can see, if I consider myself a multilingual speaker, and then if I start code switching from English, which I'm doing now, and then I'm code switching to Mongolian. Сайн байна уу? Миний нэрийг Сэндэр гэдэг. Би дөнгөж сая Монгол явчаад ирсэн. Та бүхэн бүгдээрээ сайн байцгаана уу? Or code switching into Japanese. Hi, watashi no namae wa Sender desu. You are expected to to speak those languages fluently and purely in a grammatical structure, as if you're a monolingual talking through 2 or 3 monolinguals in one brain. So that is the expectation of the bi-multilingual tradition, and that's how research has been done. When we try to understand the code switching, we start with the language. Okay, let's start with the Mongolian, let's start with the English. So that was the problem with the code switching and bi-multilingualism. However, the cognitive science, the neuroscience, they started reminding us that actually the human brain pulls elements of different languages of the multilingual repertoires for different purposes for people. So people do not actually necessarily, speak through English and then switch to Mongolian. They just, use all the available resources based on certain contexts, and they know the context. They are very much metalinguistically aware. So the question arises, what if the speakers do not orient to the juxtaposition of languages in terms of code switching or in terms of pure multilingualism? So that was the important question here to understand translanguaging. So say like, if I consider myself a bi-multilingual speaker, and then I did English and Mongolian, I code switch. Actually, I don't see myself a fluent, English speaker, or I don't see myself actually a fluent Mongolian speaker. I mean, my first language is Mongolian. I was born and raised in Mongolia. So, of course, my first language is Mongolian. But because I left Mongolia in my early adulthood, and pretty much my academic life has always been, sort of related to English. Everything was done in English, the presentations, the PhD thesis, and all of that. I'm very much used to doing my research in English language. So when I, for example, tried to do my presentation in Mongolian, which happened a few years ago, it didn't go very well because I couldn't do it in Mongolian. I couldn't present it in a very presentful way in Mongolian because I don't have the skill or repertoire or resource to do that in Mongolian. So it's writing my articles and research papers in Mongolian is also very hard because it takes much, much longer than English. And sometimes I have to give up because I don't have that skill. So even though Mongolian is my first language, do I have that skill and repertoire and resource in doing, academically higher level of Mongolian? That's a no for me. Whereas English, yes, I do my papers in English, as I'm doing my presentation now in English. I have that skill and access to that academic English, right? However, on an everyday level, when I speak to, for example, to people in English on an everyday level, for example, let's say that, hanging out with my Australian friends here, they do inside jokes using Australian jokes. I have no idea because I wasn't born here. I don't know the inside jokes. I don't know why are they laughing, because I have no idea, right? And also my accent. People tell me, "Oh, your accent is this and that." When I first arrived in Australia, they used to say, "Oh, your accent sounds very Russian." Oh, well. And I was like, oh my God, I'm Mongolian. Why does it sound Russian? That's so weird, right? And then I don't know. It's just evolved and evolved as I continue living in Australia. So I don't know what my accent is, but I know that it's not a normal accent. I mean, standard Australian English accent. So as you can see, either my Mongolian, either my English is not perfect or fluent. So if you tell me you're a fluent multilingual speaker, I would say no. I just have access to these languages, linguistic repertoires, but no, so that's the reason why we need to sort of, look at translanguaging, because translanguaging actually allows us to understand language from a more holistic ways. That is the main argument here, is users employ whatever linguistic or semiotic or, financially even resources at their disposal to achieve the communicative aims as best as they can, regardless of how well they know the involved languages. So that is basically what is translanguaging is about, right? So it's not also about the languages. We're also looking at the paralinguistic resources, emotions, facial expressions, the laughs, the gestures. Here in Australian Aboriginal context, body language and gesture and silence is very important. Aboriginal people, they're the people of a few words. Like, they tell a lot about their gestures, or they tell a lot about the body expressions. That's the part of the translanguaging. So these things we need to consider. And of course, we are living in the late modernity and super diversity. So digital technology, social media, popular culture, they are all part of the creation of translanguaging. Okay. Next slide. Now, as far as I have observed from the idea of translanguaging, is that it revolves around three different dramas, I say, three different ideologies. Dramas: the celebration, exoticization, and vilification. So the three, as if, the Three Musketeers, the tensions of the Three Musketeers, I call, because this is my favorite book. It reminds me of the Three Musketeers sometimes. So I will talk a little bit about that now. So what do we mean by the celebration? Everyone is celebrating translanguaging, pretty much, right? It's the celebration of translanguaging. We have discovered something, quite extraordinary, because finally we accept the fact that, language should be understood from the human perspective, human identities, not from the grammar, right? So that's the celebration of translanguaging. And with the translanguaging, of course, we are celebrating all these dynamics of the different linguistic diversity. We know that now creativity starts not from the code, but actually from the speaker. And translanguaging allows us, the inclusion, social justice, linguistic justice. So we are we are also sort of celebrating translanguaging because it gives us a lot of opportunities to understand language through an alternative ways. So translanguaging here, we celebrate that, because it gives us an opportunity to understand communication, not necessarily from the code, but from the speaker. And the idea of relocalization, recontextualization, resemiotization, translocalization, they are deeply embedded within translanguaging. This idea is that people borrow certain available resources from different cultural resources, and then they make it their own. So they relocalize and they sort of create new relocalized way of speaking, right? So that's the part of translanguaging as well, because as for myself, when I think about myself, I had access to, of course, Mongolian English. I also had access to to Russian, because Mongolia was the Soviet, style, the country for 70 years, colonized by basically the Soviet Union for 70 years, from 1920 until 1990, when the Cold War erupted and the Soviet Union collapsed. Mongolia transformed itself to a democratic country with a free market economy. So now Mongolia is a very much democratic country, and they have like huge friends with the US, UK, and so forth. But it has been a socialist, communist country for 70 years. Because of that, Russian language was the most important foreign language. The elderly Mongolian, they can speak all Russian. And the Mongolian actually script is Cyrillic, Russian Cyrillic. The official orthography is Russian Cyrillic, right? So I have all of these linguistic resources I have available. So I have been relocalizing these linguistic resources and sort of creating my own linguistic identity as who I am as Sender Dovchin. This is perhaps why people were saying that my English had a Russian accent, so to speak. So these are the things that we need to think about when we talk about translanguaging, recontextualization, relocalization, and so forth. I think, Angel, you talked a lot about translocalization and resematization and so forth. I remember Angel's papers on that, yeah. All right. So the another celebration of translanguaging is that, of course, it's sort of, celebrating the language creativity, the people's creativity, right? So when we look at the left brain of human, it's a very logical brain, we say, rational brain. In that brain, we sort of, do the qualification, quantities, and we standardize things, we think rationally, we grammatize, standardize things. However, our right brain is very emotional and creative brain. So when right brain and left brain, they come together, they co-create each other. They can't be understood separately. So for me, understanding, for example, pure linguistic forms, grammatic forms, is very much a myth for me, because how can you do that? Because human brains work together, right? So we can't really separate the creativity of the people and sort of trying to normalize them. So translanguaging is about the celebration of creativity. So when we talk about the creativity, it reminds me of the Bakhtin's, the language of the marketplace. Bakhtin, in my opinion, Bakhtin was a very forward thinker at his time. What he said was in Rabel in his world, what he said was that, people so he imagined language in the marketplace in the medieval era. And he said in the languages in the marketplace, people's language is like carnival. So he called it carnivalsk, right? People laugh, people, tease each other. It's humorous, it's creative. People bend, twist languages, make their own languages. So this carnivalsk language reminds me of the creativity of translanguaging we're talking about now, right? So this is the celebration. So the carnivalsk language is that, the laughter of all the people, Bakhtin says, Carnival was the true feast of time, the feast of becoming, change, and renewal. That's he's referring to language. And carnivals is based on this carnival's language, understanding of language. Chris and Blackledge, for example, argue that, playful naughtiness, young people are involved in playful naughtiness to play with languages, right? And Pennycook also said that it's a pleasure of doing things differently. All right. Because of this celebration of translanguaging, new languages and new identities are being created, and that is so exciting for us because we think that because of translanguaging, we can understand now these new forms of languages, these new forms of identities that have never existed before, right? So that's the celebration of the translanguaging as well. Now, I'm going to talk about the second drama, which is exoticization. When you are actually a translanguager, when you're involved in translanguaging, you are exoticized a lot, as if you're somebody from exotic background. And based on my own experience, as I said, when I first moved to Australia, people thought I was some sort of exotic person, right? First of all, I'm from Mongolia, I'm Asian, and then I have this weird Russian accent, and then I speak Russian, and people would say, oh wow, that's exotic. You're so exotic. And translanguages are also, the creation of translanguages sometimes it is considered as very exotic, very abnormal, out of normal way of speaking and so forth. So exoticization is one of the one of the drama of the translanguaging. However, exoticization also has very negative meanings. We all know that. It's related to the Orientalism, right? Orientalism is that you are different. You're different than us. If you're from Asia, if you're Oriental, you're different. You don't belong to us. So with the Orientalism and exoticization, the idea of othering comes out. Othering means, you don't belong here. You are not one of us. And of course, with the othering now, we have a lot of studies in applied linguistics in terms of social justice and linguistic justice. Because people have translanguaging identity, translanguagers, they become exoticized. They become the part of that, the victims of the othering. And because of that, discrimination is coming out. So we have accentism, linguistic racism, racial linguistic ideologies, translingual discrimination, and all of these ideas that coming out recently very strongly. We all know that, right? So if you think carefully, all of this discrimination, language-based discrimination, is actually emerging from how translanguagers speak. How not only how they speak, also their race, right? The racial linguistic ideology is pretty much about, it's about language and race. Not only race, it's the intersectionality, the class, right? The gender, age, ageism, ability. If you are ableism, I mean, if your English is very proficient, you're sort of, considered, okay, you have that ability to speak very good English. Whereas if your English is not good, and if you're doing a lot of translanguaging, sometimes, you're even considered as, you're not as smart as I think. That's why I'm not giving you this job, right? So all of these intersectionalities, so these are all related sort of, studies coming out, linguicism, accentism, linguistic racism, what color is your English, right? These are all related to translanguagers. The third drama is vilification. Translanguaging is also not only celebrated, but it's also vilified. What do I mean by vilified is that people, especially the traditionalists, the purists, right? They believe that translanguaging is not good. Translanguaging is basically contaminating people's language. They are contaminating people's thinking. The words coming out from translanguagers are not good because it's contaminating even the national security of the country. So, translanguaging is, Bakhtin said that translanguaging is he didn't say translanguaging. He said the carnival's language in the marketplace is fun, humorous, laughter, and all of that. But he also said that language in the marketplace is also very grotesque, right? it's very realistic language. So grotesque means that the language of degradation, people swear, people curse, people use all dirty languages, they get angry, they fight through words, right? Not only through words, the fighting through words become the physical fight. And it's very grotesque because when people are very, very in a grotesque sort of mind, they use all these, words related to lower body spectrum, for example. That's what Bakhtin argued, right? And actually, if you think about all the swear words that people are using, all the curse words, the sufferings and oath abuses people are using now, it's all related to the swear of the lower body, resources. So that was also very interesting for me to understand from Bakhtin's perspectives. So the lowering of all that high spiritual ideal abstract is also comes to the offensive curses and all of that. So that creative, humorous quality of that carnivalesque language can be also very frightening, right? It can be very revolutionary, but it can be very distorting and contaminating and so forth. So if you really think at translanguages, which I do, I did work with some of the translanguages, especially the Mongolian background translanguages, and especially the male translanguages, they can be very grotesque. When they get angry, God, the words coming out from their mouth, it's a grotesque realism. So I think it has not been studied a lot in translanguaging studies, which needs to be in the future direction, by the way. Okay. Now, so in that vilification drama, as I said before, the academics, the purists, the nationalists, they said that, not sure if you're speaking proper English or are you speaking just gibberish. So translanguaging is considered as gibberish. It's not a, standard way of speaking. I have been reading about the situations of the Singlish in Singapore. So Singapore is, of course, they all for, standard English learning, standard English. Standard English is, promoted in Singapore, whereas Singlish is considered as a, not a proper language. It's considered as a, it's always apparently vilified, according to Lionel Wee. And we all know it about African American vernaculars, right? Auckland's Ebonics. Some say gibberish, some say slang, some say this, then that, me say din that, it be my mother tongue. So she said that it's my mother tongue, but some say it's just, gibberish and dumb. But for me, it's my language. So that's one of the vilifications. And we have a lot of new languages, Chinglish, Japlish, Konglish, Monglish, right? All of these new kind of languages are always vilified by, linguists or the purists. They think that, oh, this is not good. So for even English is considered as a, English become lingua Frankensteinia, right? So Frankenstein is that this is a monster created by these all bodies, the section bodies of the person and become a monster. So English is like sort of, integrating all different, this gibberish into its own and become a lingua Frankenstein nowadays. And this is, translanguaging is playing a major role in that, right? So with these pervasive ideologies, with these vilifications of translanguaging, of course, there are important concepts involved, right? Linguistic imperialism, for example. Language death is another concept, and also linguistic purism. Linguistic purism is, for me, it's important, especially in terms of indigenous minority languages. If we, if we not try to revitalize or try to keep it, to keep it in how these indigenous people actually speak, there could be a language death, right? But some of the academics think that if we are promoting translanguaging too much, language can get contaminated and linguistic purity will be contaminated and there will be language death. Okay, my main argument here today is that it took me a long time to go to my own argument, sorry, is that, okay, translanguaging has these three dramas, right? The Three Musketeers dramas, which is exotization, celebration, and vilification. However, I argued with my colleague Jerry Lee in this book is that actually translanguaging has always been there. Since the human creation, it has always been there. When there was Homo sapiens, people started, for example, speaking through voices, speaking through some sort of, gestures, and then it has always been there. We just didn't accept it. And then many scholars, they started arguing that, actually, for example, Suresh Kanagaraja, he argues that, translingual practice is no means a new phenomenon. It has always been there. Whereas Bloomert said that it's a quite normal and basic practice for everyone. Jerry Lee said that it's everyday, unremarkable, and mundane, right? And here, Stephen May, he argued that this sudden multilingual turn, I think by multilingual turn, I think Stephen is also referring to the translanguaging turn, saying in urban biomultilingualism has its own irony because translanguaging is not just the sole product of the late modernity or super diversity or globalization. It has been present in the earlier periods of history, particularly with the emergence of nation states and nationalism, right? So it has always been there, he argued, which I kind of agree. And here also Sugihara, he also reminded us that, when multilingualism and translingualism were part of the pre-modernity and pre-colonial activities, because if you look at the actually evolution of English language, it was created by these tribal mixes of dialect of Angles, Jutes, Saxons, and then it evolved, and it became the standard English, right? So Higgins and Coen here reminded us that if we accept that as Homo sapiens, we are all the same in terms of genetic structure and cognitive potentiality. And I believe that we are all the same. We have the same brain. We have the same human structure. Everyone has a back. Everyone has a hat. Everyone has a backache. So we all have the same, all this potentiality and structure. But beyond that, we are all different, right? But why we are all different is that how we think. Our thinking makes us different. How we think or present ourselves, and that is also not very extraordinary or different. It's very common. So our diversity, our creativity, and diversity and differences, it should be understood as ordinary practice of human beings. So that's what Higgins and Coen argued. And here. You can see these all beautiful Mongolian girls who are dressed up in different Mongolian ethnic outfits, right? They have all different ethnic outfits, but because they represent different ethnic minorities in Mongolia, because they have been in different tribes in the Central Asia. It's very different, but however, we're all considered as Mongolians under the one nation state. So that's the sameness of diversity or ordinariness of difference, right? Pennycook here said that it's about the same item being different and understanding the difference as the norm and with sameness as the need of explanation. So that is how we need to understand translanguaging as well. I'll show some data now. Here's the Mongolian Kazakh girl who's doing the eagle hunting. She's very popular in Mongolia now. Now, my data is based on Mongolia, of course, as a Mongolian scholar myself. I have been doing research in relation to Mongolia since my PhD, since I met Angel, before I met Angel, actually. So I have been doing it for a long, long time, perhaps when I first started my career. So this is actually a very much a longitudinal linguistic ethnography, I would say, right? So Mongolia is a country situated in the global south very much in the periphery. It is sandwiched between two big nations, Russia and China. There is no ocean or sea. It's a landlocked country. And it considers USA and UK as his third neighboring countries. And geographically, it's a very big country, one of the top 10 countries in the world in terms of land sphere, whereas the population is very, very low, only 3.5 million people. Out of the 3.5 million people, I think 1 million people are living outside of Mongolia and still preserving the nomadic lifestyle. If you go to Mongolia and if you go to countryside in Mongolia, you will meet nomadic herders, and you can ride a horse, camel. You can even see the eagles, the hunting eagles. It's beautiful. So I highly recommend you to go to Mongolia. And if you go to Mongolia, let me know. Okay. So here's the nomadic families here. They are, I think, moving. And So Mongolian history is that very much related to this person who's called Genghis Khan. I know Genghis Khan has some bad reputation in the world, but for Mongolians, he's considered as the founding father, and he's the national icon, because without Genghis Khan, there would be no Mongolia. That's the fact, right? What he did was that there was this different Mongolian tribes in Central Asian steppe. At that time, and they were fighting with each other, right? And even China was scared of these Mongolian tribes, and they built the Great Wall of China because they were so I don't know. I mean, they were so bad. And then Genghis Khan was born, and he said he basically said, okay, I'm going to unite all these Mongolian tribes, and I'm going to call the country Mongolia, and he did, right? So Mongolia was created, and then he said, okay, the Mongolia is not enough. I'm going to, travel around the world, and I'm going to occupy everything I see. So he takes his Mongolian horses, which are very small horses compared to Western horses, because Western horses are big. Mongolian horse is small, but it's very, very strong. So only on horseback, Genghis Khan started occupying almost half of the world on horseback. So that's how we know the Great Mongol Empire, which lasted for a while. And And then Mongol Empire collapsed. And when Mongol Empire collapsed, it was colonized for a while by Manchurian China. I think Manchurian China. And then in 1920, the Soviet Union, the Russians, they become Mongolia's ally, and then they sort of, destroyed the Manchurian Empire, and then Mongolia became the Soviet communist country. Until 1990, when the Cold War erupted, the Cold War finished, and basically Mongolia decided to become the democratic country with the free market economy. Now, modern Mongolia, since 1990, democratic Mongolia is very, very different from communist Mongolia. If only Russian was the only language in Mongolia, which is popular language. Now, Russian has been completely replaced by English, of course, English and other languages. And young people are very, very much modernized, very, very much into these transcultural flows and resources. Not only English, though, there are so many other languages. Basically, the border is open, right? Everyone is welcome, every language is welcome, and so forth. So with the democracy and all of that, of course, translanguaging started emerging in the society, with the English, the mixture of English, Mongolian, and other languages. And then people started sort of, celebrating translanguaging. The celebration comes with the popular music a lot, because when Mongolia became the democratic country, the popular music scene became very, very dynamic, because young people, they wanted to sort of perform their, identity, what it means to be a young person living in a democratic new society, right? So the celebration part of translanguaging here, so this band is called the Who folk rock band in Mongolia. So this band has been a global sensation sensation because their tunes have been all over the Billboard chart. They have been touring from USA to Europe, Asia, Australia, and they have become quite popular. And now the Who is also considered as cultural icon, national icons in Mongolia. So I'll show you the music video of the Who, not the whole thing, just some of the snippets. Yeah. Can you hear the sound? Okay. Okay, let me play this quickly. Okay, So that was some of the snippets from the Who, and I'm showing this because this is kind of the celebration of what does translanguaging do, right? So how translanguaging is created, in my opinion, in this music video is that there are a lot of elements from the traditional Mongolian resources, such as you can see, there are a lot of traditional Mongolian music instruments, such as horse-headed fiddle, the jaw harp, and you can also see the Mongolian throat singing, which is a very popular Mongolian cultural iconic element, the throat singing. And these band members they all can play their own traditional Mongolian elements. And then the Mongolian lyrics is inspired by the Genghis Khan era, the war chant. So what they are singing is that if lions come, we will fight to the end. If tigers come, we will battle relentlessly. If elephants come, we will fight with fury. If humans come, we will fight and obliterate. So, and what they're also doing is that these sort of music video, it opens with these striking visuals that showcase this magnificent Mongolian landscape. And it's also showing traditional Mongolian attire, and also the cavaliers from the Mongol Empire era, which is holding the iconic flag of Genghis Khan. And it's also showing this group of Mongolian bikers symbolizing the motorcycles as the modern day horses or modern day steel horses. And all of these are based on the Western heavy metal rock genre. They are inspired by Rammstein. They're the big fan of Rammstein and Metallica. So they're all based on Rammstein and Metallica and so forth. And sometimes, in terms of lyrically, they also use English. As you can see, they have integrated Papa Roach into their music video, he was singing it in English as well when they were singing in Mongolian. So, and lyrically is that, but also they have adapted English orthographic systems using Roman script to show the song title Wolf Totem and also the band name. So it's all of these big combinations between all these different resources making this music video or making the Who. So these are the Mongolian traditional instruments that they have used. And also their inspirations, as I said, Metallica, Rammstein, System of a Down. And usually the lyrics is basically related to Mongol Empire, Mongolian shamanism, Mongolian history, Mongolian cultural icons, also the contemporary Mongolia as well. They are they criticize Mongolian politicians a lot and so forth. So on with the interview, they said that we are a blend of the East and West, old and new. Our sound is based on a sound that has been around for thousands and thousands of years. And as Mongolians, we are raised to have a great respect for our country, elders, and history. And we are human beings, and human beings and nature are connected. Now they're talking about the post-humanist theory here, And, animals are very important for us because nomadic people, they have our livestock and we are connected to our livestock. Our life depends on our livestock, right? Without livestock, there is no Mongolia. Without a horse, don't even think about Mongolia, right? So connection between nature, animal, and the throat singing is basically imitating the sound of the animal, the sound of the water, the sound of the wind. So, but then they are also pretty much inspired by this Western heavy rock genre. So what are they creating here is that with the use of English, with the use of Western elements, and with the use of Mongolian traditional elements, they are creating a new, new identity, new languages that is called the Hunu rock. The Hunu rock is a new rock genre. So this is. And the translanguaging was celebrated here by the president of Mongolia. They have been awarded the Genghis Khan Order. The Genghis Khan Order is the largest, I think it's the highest distinguished prize, which is given to, this is the highest state honor for promoting the historical and cultural heritages of Mongolia. And for the first time in the history of Mongolia, young popular music artists who have never been taken seriously were awarded with this high-ranking reward by the president of Mongolia. And this award only belonged to the classical literature writers and composers and scientists. And now the popular music artists finally got it. And translanguaging plays a major role in that. Now, the exoticization of translanguaging here based on Mongolian example. I would like to show you this example from the I think at Yale University. I think this experiment was taken in 1980s by a group of scholars at Yale University. So what they did was they played a lecture written by a Native American English speaker, right? So it was a lecture for students. However, they showed two pictures, one Asian woman and the other one Caucasian woman. And then they are supposed to assess the lecture quality by the students. And when the lecture was assessed, the Asian one was assessed as not very comprehensible, not very coherent. And sometimes the students said, very exotic accent, and the quality of lecture was not that, assessed very well. Whereas the Caucasian picture was, it's just normal, standard, easy to follow. So as you can see, exactly the same auditory sort of recording of the lecture, but two different races, and how it can affect, people's hallucination, right? So that example really resonated with my research, because when I was talking to my Asian participants in my research practice, my Mongolian participants and so forth, they always tell me that, my language is always exoticized, unique. When you have a Eastern European accent, sometimes the males call them, you have a very sexy, unique accent, right? And then they also exoticize us, where are you really from? Where are you really, really from, right? Or your English is so good. Where did you learn that? So, it's kind of like a passive-aggressive compliment. I'm sure some people didn't mean bad, right? It's just there is no awareness around this, right? No awareness. You have a very good English. How did you learn that? Saying to a person who has been an applied linguist for 20 years, how would you feel? Okay, and also the names. The Mongolian names such as Tsiringhan Pirligins need to be changed into English name from Tsiringhan to Hana, because we need to sort of, align with the ears or with the mouth of the native English speakers in Australia, because they can't hear it or they can't pronounce it. So you need to anglicize your name. So your name is very exotic. Can you please tell me your English name? In fact, here at, in Australia, many international students, especially Chinese students, they come with the English name already. So they will say, from a student called Chen, she would say, just call me Lucy, please, call me Lucy. So why do you do that? Because, people pronounce my Chinese name wrongly, and it's very embarrassing, right? So that's the part. And whereas, my Caucasian Australian participants, they never have a problem. So this is also, the exoticization is also related to the resume whitening. CV whitening is that when you put your ethnic birth name, I call it ethnic birth name in your CV, you never get a call back, because you have this weird, basically exotic name. Imagine having a name, Tsiringhan Perli Johnson. They don't even look at your CV, they throw it away. So this and this example is very much also aligning with this research, calling resume whitening doubles callbacks for minority job candidate study finds. So if you change your name into English name in your CV, you get a callback. Now, the third ideology, the drama vilification in the Mongolian context, is that I'll show you another video here. Can you hear it?
Yes. Аха Монгол хүн хуримтлалтай хүн. Дахахантай гэрүү хүчтэй шинэж байгаа. Шорон бүхтэй төлөв сүлдээ сайхан шинэж байгаа. Аврал чиргүүн сарын шинэ нэгэн цагаан сараа тэмдэглэж байгаа. Чусан байгаа жил сайхан жил байгаа. Үржил сайхан ээ. Хасан дотор дорцууд хайчин тавлаг байр сайхан ээ. Үржил чадвар төмөрхүүлгийн эзэн бодол сайхан ээ. Гадаа дайдаг хацтай авийн хүүхэн бэ сайхан ээ. Бүгд сайхан ээ. Хуримшигтай
Okay. Oh, we all know this is a Korean pop sensation size, a Gangnam Style. It has also been a global sensation, sort of, shifting the global South music into the center at that time. I mean, I do like K-pop, BTS. I'm a huge fan of BTS. So with this Gangnam Style, there were lots of parodies around the world, right? So I guess every country had their own parodies of Gangnam Style, and Mongolia, of course, they did their own parody like this. Also mixing the traditional Mongolian stuff, traditional Mongolian cultural elements into Gangnam Style and created their own Gangnam Style. However, this was not well received. It was vilified by academics, by purists and traditionalists, because they said, weird, arrogant, monkey-like identities with Mongolian names and Mongolian features, they are growing due to the pollution of the native language and culture. So the professor Naden writes. And then Professor Galton says that this language used by these Mongols are called orphan language, and it has lost its owners, so translanguaging. So here, for example, in Gangnam Style, they sort of use the Koreanized Mongolian. When they sing in Mongolian, they sort of try to sound like Korean, and it was not well received. But as you can see, the treatment of different languages as well. When it's English used, it's not that harshly criticized. When it comes to Korean or other Asian language like Chinese, they get very, very protective as well, right? So there is a difference between also languages. And logging into the professor, he said Mongolian border security is not yet violated, but its national language is being violated because of the linguistic contamination and translanguaging. It's a contaminated language. The spread of internet English in Mongolian language is an epidemic plague. It's infested Mongolian language with its head lice. So they would really want to keep their Mongolian language pure, linguistically pure, and translanguaging is a killer for this one. And young people are responsible for this, right? So this is the vilification of the translanguaging. However, we need to also, this is quite ironic. This criticism is very ironic because you can see here in the left side the traditional Mongolian classic script called Uyghur script, which was actually established by Genghis Khan. He said that, okay, we need our own written orthography. Let's have our written system. So he created this Mongolian script, and which has been used for many, many years until Russians Soviet come out and they say, we need to replace your classic Mongolian with our Russian Cyrillics. Now, still Mongolian official orthography is a Russian Cyrillic here, right? And then Mongolian language actually has a lot of Russian repertoires and resources. Mongolians, they don't even know that we are using Russian here. Here it says, Durun Tangching is a Russian word, but in Mongolia it's called, Mongolian word. Because of the Russian 70 years of Soviet influence, a lot of Russian words and resources have been relocalized, resemiotized into the Mongolian language. It has become a big part of the Mongolian language. However, these traditionalists, they vilify the Mongolian language, the Mongolian new identities, because they believe that, other languages have been threatening the Mongolian language, but it has always been there. Russian language has always been there. So it's quite ironic here. This is another Russian examples here. Also, Chinese language has been a big part of the Mongolian language because Mongolia and China have long history, right? So a lot of Mongolian food, traditional Mongolian food, as you can see here, hoshur, bans, bosh, apparently they are Chinese. So this meal called, traditional Mongolian meal called hoshur is actually Chinese, hua xiao. So Mongolian language has been relocalized by Chinese repertoires a lot as well, but we think that it's a pure Mongolian language. And in fact, since 1990, there were a lot of Mongolian wrestlers going to Japan, becoming sumo champions in Japan. They have totally changed the sumo situation in Japan because they have become all the champions. And then because of the sumo, we are in Mongolian language has started relocalizing a lot of new Japanese words and expressions. And no one is saying anything because people like sumo. And people think that, Mongolia is sort of, sumo wrestling is sort of so popular in Japan and Mongolia, it's not a problem, right? So as you can see here is that, as Leonardo da Vinci said, study the science of art, study the art of science, develop your senses, learn how to see, realize that everything connects to everything else. So for me, translanguaging is actually to study the science of art, and we need to develop our senses to learn how translanguaging works, because when we look at translanguaging, it just connects to everything, everyone, and everything else, past, present, and future. So language and communicative practice of people, translanguaging is very much interacting, intersecting, and connecting across time and space, across chronotopic, past, history, future, and present. We all know that Shakespeare, and I love Shakespeare. Sometimes when I read Romeo and Juliet, I don't really understand what he said. I need to read it over and over to make sense of it. Hamlet, it's a very hard reading in English, to be honest. Very difficult. And I mean, English was different at Shakespearean time. And now contemporary English is different. It has been relocalized. It has been sort of, Franco-Einsteinized, right? So this is how we understand the modern English, which was completely different from Shakespearean English. So the implication here, I would like to say for English language teaching and TESOL is the Mongolian kids on Mongolian yaks here. So I will start my implications from here. Is that we have 750 million worldwide people who speak English as a foreign language or a second language. And English as the second language or foreign language accounts roughly for 375 English language learners. So 375 million people are learning English. And as you can see, we have so many people learning English around the world like this. And translanguaging is pretty much a rather ordinary or necessary condition of translanguaging is its ordinariness, because we have so many people learning English and they all have different backgrounds. They all have different linguistic and cultural diversity and differences, and trying translanguaging, advocating translanguaging for English language learners, for English language teaching would actually do good. And actually, if we consider translanguaging as a necessary, ordinary part of English language teaching and learning, then we will start looking at English language teaching from a different perspective. That's what I'm trying to argue. So translanguaging here is neither to celebrate nor to deplore, but something that we need to observe and examine with an interest like anything else. So translanguaging has always been there. It has always been for centuries and centuries. So translanguaging here, when we say that we need to observe and examine with interest like anything else, that means that when we start teaching English in the classroom, we need to consider that different linguistic repertoires, different language repertoires are, very much ordinary inside the classroom and outside the classroom. It actually might help us as English teachers to sort of understand how our students, think differently, talk differently, or multiple ways of learning and being and speaking English differently, multiple different practices and linguistic repertoires and agencies are all involved in teaching and learning English. So focusing on monolingual minds in relation to TESOL and English language teaching is very irresponsible. But rather, if we sort of include translanguaging, responsibility as TESOL educators. So staying with our ordinariness allows us to recognize the ordinariness of other people and others. And that is in this recognition that TESOL and English language teaching becomes possible. So I would like to finish this presentation with Heraclitus. We step and we don't step into the same rivers. We are and we are not. So this is the philosophical thinking that we need to revisit sometimes. Okay, thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Sandra Dovchin. I think this is a really wonderful presentation. It's both intellectually inspiring and also very much grounded in your own lived experiences. So I take the privilege of being the chair. I ask the first question and I invite our co-host. I think whenever we present something about translanguaging as an academic, there's always a question from the audience that I encountered that, oh, hey, you guys, you critical theorists, when you write your critical papers, you still write in monolingual English, monolingual, monoglossate, monoregister, and using the Western dominant academic style. So how do you answer that kind of question? I always encounter that.
Thank you, Angel, for that question. Can I ask, how do you respond?
Right. I usually say, yes, this is social injustice, epistemic injustice, domination in academia of the Western Anglo-European traditions, and we're working to change it. And there are new journals, like my colleague here, Pamo Saad, and he and his colleagues, we are both on their editorial board. We start this journal and hoping to welcome alternative ways of expressing knowledges and ideas, like writing a poem, like writing a story, a narrative, and having translanguaging writings in academic journals. We need to keep working on it. It cannot be changed overnight because these people have vested interests. They are gatekeepers, these journal editors. They just, they have so much vested interest. And so that's my standard.
Angel, I totally agree with that. And I mean, applied linguistics and TESOL field, it has been dominated by the Western knowledge, English language, spearheaded by English language. And it has always been like that. But luckily, I think in recent, the emergent studies, they are resisting this norm, right? We need to sort of, and in order to do that, I think it's not just the talk, we need to walk the talk, right? So that's the problem here, walk the talk. And how do we do that? And I know some of our colleagues are actually starting to implement. I have been invited to write a chapter for one edited volume, and it's called Decolonizing the Academic Writing. And they invited all the authors to write using translanguaging. And that was a challenge for me because I didn't know how to do that, right? How to do that. So that was a challenge. However, I think I was thinking carefully what to do, but then I thought that, female background scholars like us, not only female, because gender is another issue as well, right? and then female scholars with Asian background like us, especially Asian. So that's the intersectionality of a different sort of, oppression, the sexism and racism and plus the linguicism now, because we are not, native, we're considered not native English speakers, so to speak. So all this intersectionality. However, people are beginning to listen to us. People are starting to look at our works, and we have our voices. And I think that's one of the decolonial way of expressing ourselves. And I think that the gatekeepers, they need to promote scholars from diverse backgrounds, not only just citing each other's, the English speakers' works, not only just, these big male theorists citing each other, right? I think we need to be really inclusive, and we need to be very careful. And I think that's one way of doing that. Like the presentation I'm doing today, I think it's one of the decolonial way of looking at the academia. I mean, I'm a Mongolian background female scholar, traditionally speaking, who is going to read my works? Who's going to listen to my talk? But this is an empowering way of, resisting these norms, in my opinion. And we need to collectively start doing this together. Otherwise, just individually, it's not going to work. Yeah.
We need to support each other.
Yeah.
Bongi, I'd like to invite you because Bongi is a huge fan of Sanders.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for all the wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed your talk, especially allowing us to reorient ourselves into either in bandwagon with translanguaging and celebrating, or in the other end of the spectrum, vilification. And so it was very refreshing to hear, and then how people are talking about translanguaging within those three domains. So it was very, very insightful. When I was reading your article, I was constantly struggling with the the nature of knowledge production in academic writing, academic journals, versus the concept that you were promoting. The translanguaging is ordinary and it's not new. Then, and I do get it. And then, but we are also always, however, we are constantly encountered when it comes to publications is we have to create, the main purpose of writing is to advancement of knowledge. And we always have to say, this is new and this is unique. Therefore, I am justifying my ideas to be published. And so the concept of ordinariness, and then at the same time, what's new, was constantly conflicting while I'm reading your article. And I was like, I was wondering about how you take this.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. When I first started my PhD thesis, or when I first started my PhD, I was really excited because I had a chance to look at the new social linguistic context in Mongolia from when they became a democratic country from 1990, right? So they have English, different new languages coming into into Mongolian social linguistic sphere, and then translanguaging as an analytic framework really helped me to understand what is really happening in the new society, and how young people are creating new languages and new identities based on translanguaging, right? Of course, I'll be very excited, and of course, it will be new for me. Of course, I will say this is new, right? And I get very excited, and my contribution to the field advancement of knowledge would be, looking at the new society, new social linguistic perspective from new analytic framework, translanguaging, and that's my contribution. But then I started reading a lot about this staying with your ordinariness as well. Since then, staying with your ordinariness, being true to your ordinary part of what it means to be a human being. And I also started reading a lot. My supervisor, Alastair Pennycook, he was writing a lot about ordinariness, and we have these critical dialogues about. He would always question me. He was actually very much, pushing my boundary. He would say, he would say something like, well, I'm very happy that you discovered all this new, linguistic creativity, linguistic examples, but are they really new? And that was very frustrating question for me. I would say, of course they're new. What are you talking about? I want to just stop there. Of course this is new. That's it. I want to finish my PhD thesis. That's all. However, he always questioned me. Sandra, you're saying that this is unique. You're saying that this is, creative. This has never happened before, but are you sure? That was the question. And then, I started reading about the theories of sameness of difference, ordinariness of diversity, staying with your ordinariness. And I believe that translanguaging is not a new invention, that we have created just in the last 2 decades, or not even 2 decades, I don't know, a decade or so. It has always been there. It's just, philosophically and critically, we didn't say it, we didn't say it. So another new advancement of the knowledge in translanguaging is that we need to stay with our ordinariness. And that's the advancement of knowledge as well, I would say.
Great.
Yeah.
Let's invite Amy and then Pedro, and then Tsinghua. Yeah, Amy. Amy is our Simon Fraser, our youngest PhD student here.
Okay. Hi, Amy.
Thank you for your very engaging presentation. I really enjoyed everything you presented for us, especially the music video performed by Hunu Rock.
Yeah.
They blended everything in their music video, their traditional instruments, and also I noticed some American culture and American flag. So I was wondering, so what role do the linguisticales, the notion you mentioned in your paper, play in the identity formation of Mongolian youth? How do they perceive themselves? Like global citizen or
Yeah, good question. Thank you, Amy. So I believe that young people in Mongolia, especially since I call them the post-socialist Mongolia, right? Post-socialist Mongolian young people, they are very much proud of being a Mongolian person, because I think because of the historical, cultural, linguistic heritage and roots and all this, nomadic sort of knowledge system. So they're very much connected to their ancestors. So very much proud young Mongolian people, being a proud Mongolian. However, they are very much connected to the modern world as well, very flexible and fluid, adaptive as well. They know what's going on in the world. They know they know the latest news. They have all the available digital resources and repertoires. So what we are seeing here is that currently we have this digital development is happening not only in Mongolia, around the world. So they're just stepping in the same stone with everyone else in the world. So when we talk about young Mongolian people and identity, I would say it's the mix of the modern and the old, the tradition and modernity as well. However, all young people are very proud of being a Mongolian. So that is the identity of young people in Mongolia. But remember that I'm sure that during the communist time, or the Mongolian young people was also very proud of being a Mongolian person. It's just they didn't have the digital resource or access. They didn't have English. So that was a completely different social linguistic history and background there. So language, what I'm trying to say is that language evolves based on particular social linguistic history and situations. But then language is very much, resilient as well. It stays as it is and it continues. So translanguaging is actually, in my opinion, the recontextualization, relocalization is helping us to understand how language and identities are evolving based on that particular social linguistic history and background. Yeah.
Yes. May I invite Pedro to ask your question? Pedro?
Thanks, Angel, and thank you, Dr. Dovchin, for the presentation. I also enjoyed
Welcome, Pedro.
I enjoyed the video. I already knew about the Who band, and
I'm sure you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like heavy metal, so
Yeah.
When you were looking at translanguaging and then highlighting the three aspects of celebration, exoticization, and vilification. Looking at the video, what struck to me was the way that all of these things came together. It was not only the linguistic repertoires, but it was also the chronotopic aspect when they were referencing the times of Genghis Khan with contemporary Mongolia. The modern transmutizing as well with Mongolian shamanism and music, traditional instruments and modern instruments. This is all translanguaging for me because this is how we communicate. We talk to each other. We are reminded of stories from our ancestors. We talk about politics. We talk about the what is happening to us. We talk about our emotions. This is all translanguaging for me. So this is much related to what I would consider the ordinariness. How do you see? I don't know if that would make sense or not. But how do you see these aspects of translanguaging then?
Yeah, Pedro, I think you eloquently and very nicely summarized my presentation. Thank you very much. Yeah.
That was not my purpose.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to say through my presentation, right? All of this talking and expressing ourselves is actually translanguaging. As you say, if I was following the code switching norm by multilingual norm, right, then I would have to follow English. I have to think through English, and that's pretty much it. If I was following only English, probably I wouldn't be able to express my emotions. Probably I wouldn't be able to think deeply or to talk holistically or organically. However, translanguaging allows us to you said transsemiotisation. That's a very important, I think, aspect of the translanguaging that needs to be discussed more, I think, in the future. Because we are, when we talk and when we communicate, what we are doing is not only languaging, because if we're saying languaging, it's only about language, isn't it? But what we are doing is deeper than language. We are actually doing the transsemiotisation. So, and it has always been there, and humans has always been like that. And it's very, very ordinary practice. So understanding the ordinariness of difference for us, I think it will make us feel more grounded and, yeah. I totally agree. Yeah.
I think that a follow-up question then for the interest of our audience would be, how can we leverage all of this? Because it's beautiful when we talk and it makes sense to us. But thinking of educators, thinking of practitioners, how can we leverage that in our classes in educational settings then.
Yeah, I think we need to start from very small steps. I think, when we just want to do it straight away, it's not going to happen. Unfortunately, I think everything starts from small talks and small steps. So, as we were talking before with Angel, we need to do something collectively and walk the talk, not to talk the talk, right? So what I try to do in my classroom, for example, is that it starts from very small things. For example, I tell my students, I only want to use your real birth name. So let's pronounce it very nicely. Let's understand your name meanings. Okay, what does Qing means in Chinese? How is it related to your country's history, right? Must be so beautiful your parents gave you this name. What does it mean? And then when we start that question, it actually really, I can see there's a spark in their eyes, right? They're like, oh, wow, they are interested in my culture, in my name. So classroom environment is completely different. That's how the transsemitization starts. So that's how I start. And then there are many studies nowadays how to leverage translanguaging in the classroom for educators. Fortunately, we have many emerging studies that I get very much inspiration a lot from. So I think we could leverage those resources. Using translanguaging as an English language teaching resources, I think it's wonderful, but it really depends on how we gonna use it, right? So yeah, the small steps, or allowing our students to say something in their own languages. How do you say hello in Chinese or in Mongolian? Or, how does it work in your country and all of that? Just, connecting all this missing jigsaw puzzles and making it as a whole.
Yes, this is also Phoebe. Phoebe is sick. She cannot, her bad cough. She lost her voice. But her question is similar to Pedro. I'm reading. How does your research inform policymakers and language educators? And language and identity are interwoven among, So I think it's a similar. But apart from our classroom work, what about policymakers? I think that's the question.
With the policymakers, also small steps, in my opinion. Also small practical steps, because policymakers are very hard to reach. They are up there on the top, right? So what we're going to do, what I do is that I try to collaborate a lot with the departments. For example, I collaborate with the Department of Communities, Department of Education here in Australia, and then I sort of share my research, do some professional development seminars and workshop with the departments. And for example, I was giving talks on linguistic racism for, I think, Office of Multicultural Interest staff members. And then based on that, they decided that linguistic racism should be a part of their cultural awareness program, for example. So that starts with the small steps, I think this is our responsibility as researchers to really extend ourselves externally than academia. And if we just do our research and stay in our own little lab, it's not going to happen. We need to go out and talk to the department people. We need to go out to the policymakers. They are very much open to ideas, new ideas. What's happening in your research? How can we help? So it's this, doing connection with all these external stakeholders. And now in Australia, one of the important criteria for researchers, especially for promotion and stuff like that, is that what is your external research impact and external, engagement with stakeholders. And I think that's also an important part of being a researcher. And also engaging with the media.
Yes.
Media, talking to journalists, talking to radio stations, TV, that has a great impact because it reaches out to normal people, right? Ordinary, population.
Non-academic. And here are thank you from our feedback and questions from our YouTube audience. So here's Ubashi Raha. She says, thank you, Dr. Sander and Dr. Angel. It was a very enlightening presentation. the idea of how ordinary and normal translanguaging is. And I loved how contemporary music was used to convey the concept. So thank you, Ubashi. And then we have another question or feedback from Gloria Jiang. Thanks for the thought-provoking sharing, Sandra and Angel. I am wondering what degree from assessment and systemic levels reforms can be made to leverage translanguaging. It's kind of similar to the question of policymakers. Yeah. Assessment, it is an uphill battle here. I am having this project theorizing plurilingual assessment. We submitted a panel on this theme with Constant Learn, teacher prayer, but we were rejected. And then the reviewer was saying, oh, you haven't said enough about issues of validity and reliability. But we won't give up. We will carry on. Yeah, we will carry on. Yes.
This is the thing I was talking about, Angel. We need to be supportive of each other if there is any, this sort of provocative ideas we have, right? And then it really is helpful decolonizing academia, and it's not very helpful when it's rejected. I'm just really disappointed to hear that.
It's okay. We are resilient. And I'd like to invite Qinghua to ask.
Yes, Qinghua.
Yes, I'm
you
here.
have been listening very patiently.
Yes, thank you very much. It was like a great talk. I not only enjoy the content, but I also enjoy your style of presentation. I think you've made very academic discussion to be both playful and meaningful for every one of us. So it was like a really interesting experience. So I was also thinking along about the pedagogy and the teaching thing. One thing that comes to my mind is that there's a lot of folk theories, what I would call it now, about English language teaching, like we have to give students maximum exposure. We should not take away students' ability and chances to practice their English in class by inserting any other languages in the class. But actually, I feel like after your talk, I feel like that the English language itself and the practice of limiting students to only speak English in class kind of have placed like a limitation on the students for them to be able to express more epistemic diversely in the classroom. So actually the English language is actually creating this kind of a barrier for students to express what their whole life experience would be, or what kind of culture they have been in, and also to communicate their emotion, because we're limiting them to just speak in a way embedded by the English language. So that's why I think it's important also for us to have like theories to continue to theorizing and to popularize these theories, like to countering the discourses like maximum exposure, maybe through teacher education. So we know that teaching English is much more than just translanguaging is much more than just adding another language. It's like enabling students so that they can express themselves in a more diverse way, like beyond what is being imposed by the English language. So that's why I would like to ask you to comment on this as well. So like, do you think that like additional theorization maybe through teacher education would also help with that? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for this question. And I have also wondered about this question a lot. I think we all wonder about this question as language educators, right? I think monolingual mindset is the limiting one, because it's so pervasive, right? It's so pervasive. We all believe that if we speak this certain language monolingually and purely, that's the result, the successful outcome. So when we teach English in the classroom, we believe that using only English will really help our students to learn English. And that has always been like that. The task-based language teaching has always been, monolingual mindset English, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I believe. However, if you look at task-based language teaching, is tasks. How do we create tasks? It's very similar to translanguaging approach. Actually, it says that students need to use all available resources to learn English. Right?
Yes.
That's what tasks are about. But then all available resources, the second language is not in that. So what do we mean by that, right? So this is really like there is a tension there. For learning English, for learning second language, the first language becomes the barrier for somehow in the classroom. So I think the main outcome of the English classroom should be enabling our students to talk, to open up, to express and communicate, not going towards achieve just English. So in order to do that, I think the framework such as translanguaging is a very great repertoire to leverage, because as I said, it helps our students to really empower them to use whatever available resources they have. The classroom will become much more meaningful. So for me, as a language educator, I always use translanguaging in the classroom. There is no English only rule in the classroom. And it's impossible, actually. It's impossible for me.
Right.
Thank you.
To be.
Yeah. I have this question from Chun Xiao, our master student at Simon Fraser. She asked, how does the increasing usage of different writing technologies impact the practices of translanguaging in Mongolia?
How does the impact of different writing?
Allowing different writing technologies. I don't understand what she means by writing technologies. Maybe like social media input system, or using different writing systems, like the alphabet.
Yeah. I think, as I said before, in Mongolia, the official orthography is a Russian Cyrillics in language. So there are lots of tensions. Yeah.
Yes. And from the YouTube audience, Ubashi, she says, great question, Tsinghua. As a practitioner in international language schools, this is the biggest barrier that we face. And Ubashi has been trying to change that in the classroom. Bravo, Ubashi. Thank you for being so brave and so bold in doing it in your classroom. I think we have exhausted a lot of time, and it has been an hour and a half. But for those who are in the audience, please give us a like and subscribe to our channel. Press the bell button, you will get notifications, and also share our video, our channel with your colleagues and students. And I'd like to invite all our co-hosts to have some final thank you or remarks to Professor Sander.
Thank you, Angel.
Bungie first. Yeah, Bungie. Yeah.
I was looking forward to seeing you at AAAL, but anyway.
Yeah. Bungie, any final remarks? Yeah.
Oh, can I ask you one more question before
Okay.
we go?
Yeah, okay.
When everyone was asking about the K-12 implication for K-12 or policy, I was starting to think about in the context of, for example, North America, where transitional bilingualism is one of the underlying idea, whether it's K-12, like Spanish English bilingualism in the United States, or when we teach international student academic writing, it's also transitional bilingualism, where we are shifting students to learn to adapt to the mainstream. And I am just struggling with this transitional bilingualism that eventually like pushing the student to become the monolingual subject. And I'm just wondering also how can we play with this concept or engage with this idea and then promote translanguaging in a way that actually serves them at the same time not being subjugated to this very harmful idea, monolingual idea.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I guess, as I said before, we start with the small steps, right? Small steps. Everybody individually, small steps, and then collectively, big step. So I think that would be the shortest answer for that. But that's very concerning to hear. And there will be a lot of pervasive ideologies coming out in the future. And I think it's our responsibility as applied linguists and researchers, it's our ethical responsibility to resist these pervasive ideologies and to fight for social justice and linguistic justice. Yeah.
Yes. It's so good that Sander, you represent that kind of hope for us. The next generation. We need the next like Pedro, Bungi, Tsinghua, Amy, the next generation. And as Bungi, I always told the story of 这个愚公移山, like the story of this 愚公移山, the silly man is trying to remove the mountain that's blocking everybody, and everybody's laughing at him. But he said, I have my next generation and next generation, next generation, we will succeed. Okay.
Yeah.
So the hope is in you, in Professor Sander, in Dr. Tsinghua, Dr. Bungi, going to be Dr. Pedro, going to be Dr. Amy, okay, and also our audiences. I think we just don't. A lot of these neoliberalist ideologies and conservative ideologies, they just want to tell us, don't even dream about it. Give it up. There's no alternative. See? It won't change overnight. But we all need to learn from this silly guy.
Yeah, Angel, that's really inspiring. I mean, that's really inspiring. And actually, you are the one I was inspired when I started my PhD as well. So I'm very thankful to Angel as well. Like her early works on racism, her early works in racism in TESOL, these are all very inspiring works. And I was actually very much inspired by Angel's works as well. So if we're talking about...
And your work now is inspiring the next generation, like Bungi, like Amy, like Pedro, like Tsinghua. And then Tsinghua, Bungi, Pedro, and Amy will inspire the next generation.
Yeah.
So we are hopeful. And also
we are very hopeful. And Angel, there's this new book called Language and Hope, right, by Daniel Silver and Jerry Lee, and that's a very inspiring book. It's about the hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also to the audience and to those who will listen to our YouTube, I think there is this disruptive technology, the generative AI. Right now, the only thing that generative AI, large language model, cannot do yet is translanguaging. It's embodied transsemiotizing. It's transknowledging. It's transculturing, what Tsinghua and I call the 4T lenses. Now, generative AI is advancing rapidly. Maybe one day they will be able to do these. But we are doing our next generation a huge disservice if higher education, K to 12, keep this monolingual norm for whatever reasons, for vested interest or for their misguided theories, the Chomskyan theories, totally misguiding and misleading. Sooner or later, you will find all these large language models taking over your place, monolingual teachers. No need for you now. We have Gen AI to take up your monolingual role. Right?
Yeah.
So anyway, we want to end.
Yeah, that's another big topic, and it's also very concerning. It's going to end up the monolingual robots. With the AI.
There is a paper that will come out from the Australian Applied Linguistic Journal, and I think because Gen AI is very monolingual right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They don't do
And
translanguaging.
because
No.
they are trained on this dominant Western Anglo-European texts on the
Yeah.
internet and other books. So, we have someone, Tim. Okay. So I was saying, thanks for your presentation, Professor Dovchin, and thanks for organizing. I would just like, we are going to, Tsinghua has suggested, given the AI advancement, we can have short videos made of our long videos. So I would like to invite Tsinghua when he has a chance to try it out, to make a short video out of our almost 2-hour video.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean,
Have a short
we'll try to do a summary of this video into like 3 minutes video. But let's see. Let's see.
And then we can put it on social media. And then
Okay.
Professor Sander, you will go viral, like Gangnam style. So we need to make use of the means to spread our message. We need to have this heteroglossia, Batinian. We need to dismantle this very colonial, very imperialist monolingualism. But of course, we also respect indigenous people's idea to protect their languages. So it depends on the context. But in most of the contexts now, it is very much colonial in the context of English. Okay, so thank you everybody for joining us, and for those on YouTube, and please spread our video and subscribe to our channel. And we will invite more inspiring speakers like Professor Sander Dovchin in the near future. So stay tuned in to our channel. And with that, we end on a note of hope and a note of optimism, no matter how difficult the challenges are. Thank you again, Professor Sander.
Thank you so much,
you.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.